I shot a short film in less than 4 hours and only spent $27 on it. That short film is now closing in on 100,000 views. Here's how I did it. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Directed by Jamal, and you absolutely heard that right. Today, I'm going to give you my strategy that I used to film my very own short film in less than 4 hours, and I spent only $27 making my film, y'all. And as of today, my short film is closing in on 100,000 views, so I'm super excited about it, and I want to share my strategy and my process that I went through with you so that you can take this strategy, make your short film, put it out, and show the world how dope you are. So the first step in my strategy was preparation. As always, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. I spent a lot of time before I even started shooting making sure I did the necessary things that weren't so sexy. They weren't as fun as shooting. They weren't as exciting, but they were super important to make sure that the shoot went super smooth and that I had everything I need and I didn't miss anything. Some of the things that went into my pre-production process included location scouting. I wrote the film to use as minimum locations as possible. I only wanted to use 3 locations in the film because I didn't want to waste a lot of time going from location to location. So the locations that I used were outside by a train track, not too far from my house, my actual house, and the parking lot to my apartment building. Those are the only 3 locations I used, and since they were all relatively close to my house, I was able to take my time. I was able to try out different angles and do camera tests and all these different things before I shot the film to make sure all the locations were going to give me what I needed, that audio wasn't going to be a problem, that we weren't going to have too many interruptions by wandering eyes and strangers. I made sure all of these things were on point before we even started shooting so that the shoot day can go as smooth as possible. Another thing I did in pre-production was planning my light setups. Again, since I was using my house and I was using areas close to my house, then I could kind of take my time and I could set up lights and I could play with these different lighting patterns to see which ones would best serve my story. And I ultimately decided that for the interior scenes, I was gonna backlight my subjects from the patio, and that was going to basically be motivated by the porch light, and that I would use the TV as motivation for the field light. You know, they were supposed to be watching TV in the scene, so you can kind of see it flickering off of their skin. And when it came to the exterior daylight scenes in the park, you know, I went outside the entire week before I planned on filming to watch the sun, to see exactly what time it gets dark, to make sure that the way that the light was hitting my subject's face was going to be conducive to telling the story that I want to tell. And also because I knew that part of my film was going to take place during the day and part of my film was going to take place during the night, and that we only had 4 hours to shoot, I wanted to make sure that I picked the time that would allow us to get the daylight scenes and then be able to transition into the night scenes without spending a whole lot of time waiting. So I think we might have started shooting around 5:30 or 6. By the time we knocked out all the scenes outside by the train tracks, then the sun was getting pretty low, which was perfect because by the time I finished setting up the lights for the interior scenes, then it was pitch black outside and we were just able to keep rolling. The third thing I did was I had all my props ready. I knew exactly which props I wanted to use because I honestly wrote the short film based around props and again locations that I already had to make it easy on myself. So I knew there's certain props I wanted to use, like the frying pan that Jenna hit the killer in the head with. That was a prop frying pan that I used on a previous film of mine called Truth or Double Dare. I also used this little book. It was supposed to be like a William Shakespeare book that was really like a hiding spot, right? So that's where the money was hidden when Jason found the money after the killer did his thing to the girl. You know, that's the prop that we used to hide the money. And that was also a prop that I used in the previous film of mine called Switch That Love. And the third prop I knew I wanted to use was this little prop knife that the killer used to stab the girl outside by the train tracks. That was a prop that was also from the scary movie Truth or Double Dare. And the last prop I knew I needed was the gun that the killer used when he first broke into the house and, you know, had Jason up against the wall begging for his life or whatever. That gun was a prop that I've used in a lot of other projects. So I wrote all these props into the script because I knew I had them and I was going to use them all because why not, right? We're telling a fun story. Another thing I did was I planned out all of my shots. Now, this is something that you should, for the most part, be doing anyway, but I know a lot of filmmakers kind of skip that part because, again, it's not sexy and it's not fun and it's easy to skip, but you should be storyboarding your film because it gives you an idea of what you need to do once you're on set. And if you don't storyboard, then you can tend to waste a lot of time on set trying different things out that might not work. And now, of course, it's always good to keep flexibility because once you start shooting, you might see things that you didn't think of, and you know, you always want to stay on your toes just in case something presents itself that you didn't think about. But for the most part, I knew all the shots that I wanted. I knew that I was going to want a low angle when the killer approached Jason for the first time in the house. For the iconic shot that I used as the thumbnail for the short film, which was the shot when the killer was standing behind Jason and Jenna and he was outside and you just see him in the background looking super menacing. I 100% knew that I wanted that shot and I planned it, everything from the way the light was hitting the killer to, you know, the way they were in the, Jason and Jenna were in the foreground, kind of darker, like all of that was planned. And I think that that shot, which became the thumbnail, is a large part of why the film is doing so good on YouTube. And the last thing I did to prepare for this film to make sure things went as smooth as possible on shoot day is we had table reads. And it wasn't a lot of dialogue in the film, but I am a big fan of table reads because they just help you hear. It helps you as the director and the filmmaker hear how the lines are going to be delivered by your cast, but it also helps them, the cast, get a flow for the lines. It helps you give direction early so that you don't have to spend a lot of time giving direction during the shoot because that eats up time. It helps people, you know, it helps us all get the chemistry down. The only thing we kind of had to figure out on the spot was the fight choreography for the little tussle between Jason and the killer. And luckily the actor that played the killer, his name is Robert. He's an actual stunt coordinator. He choreographs fights, so he was able to lend a tremendous amount of value to making that scene happen, making it look realistic, not having it look too cheesy. So that's the only thing we had to kind of figure out on set. But since we had a good idea of how we wanted to do it, even that didn't take long. I think maybe it took about 15 minutes to get that scene choreographed. Now, we definitely made sure we didn't make that fight scene too complex. Some of the ways we were able to save time with the fight scene was to make sure that nobody had to hit the ground. We didn't do any blows. We didn't exchange blows or nothing like that. It was just basically a quick tussle, some grappling, and, you know, the killer took a frying pan to the head and that was it. So it took about 15 minutes to choreograph all of that, but once we got it right, it was awesome. It looked super dope on camera and it was definitely time well spent. The next part of my strategy was on the actual shoot day. Now, since I had spent so much time preparing everything, I didn't have to waste a lot of time trying stuff out on set, right? So I didn't have to worry about getting coverage that I didn't need, right? If I would have came into the situation not knowing what I wanted, then I probably would have overshot for coverage. I would have had to get a wide, a medium, and a close-up for every single shot and every single scene because I would have been saying, well, I might need this later in editing. But since I knew exactly what I wanted and I had the shot storyboarded out, I didn't have to waste time getting extra coverage that I didn't need. So on a scene where I just knew I was going to use the close-up, I only shot the close-up. On scenes where I just knew I was going to need, you know, a wide shot, I only shot the wide shot. So I didn't have to worry about doing a lot of takes. I didn't have to worry about my talent messing up their lines or not being sure what to do. Like, I didn't have to worry about none of that. So we were able to move pretty fast. We were able to get the shots we needed. We was able to get the scenes wrapped up, and we were able to keep moving. Now, the next part of my strategy involved the editing process. Now, we all know editing takes the longest when it comes to making a film. That's the part where you're going to be sitting at the computer for a few hours making it happen. And honestly, I probably spent about another 3 to 4 hours editing the film. You know, I had to sequence it and actually lay it out how I wanted to. I had to get the audio right, mix the dialogue and the voices, which again, it wasn't a lot of dialogue. So, you know, that wasn't super time consuming, but it still took a little time to get that right. I had to color grade the film, which didn't take super long because I had a pretty good idea of how I wanted the film to look. I lit it and shot it stylistically in a way to give it a gritty vibe, so I knew that my color grade was gonna help sell that vibe and that idea. You know, I added a little grain in to give it that old school, I'm watching this in a cinema vibe, and I knew that I was gonna want, you know, music to fit the vibe, because when it came to the music, I actually was thinking like a horror film. Like, I was using music that would be good for a horror film, but that was on purpose just because I wanted this short film to kind of transcend genres, if that makes sense. So it kind of feels like a thriller, kind of feels like a horror film. Which one is it? Who knows? Just enjoy it, right? That was kind of the idea. Now, the last part of my strategy was the marketing. And the marketing was super important because that is how I got my film Blood Money currently closing in on 100,000 views, y'all. And what I did were 3 very cool hacks, if you want to call them, that I used to basically make the YouTube algorithm promote my film. The first thing I did was that I took the most captivating, compelling still shot from the film, which in my opinion was the shot of the killer standing behind the couple, staring at them through the window and them not even knowing that he's back there. I knew for a fact that that shot, even when I shot it, I knew that that shot was going to be super cool, and I knew that it was going to catch people's attention. So I decided to make that shot the thumbnail for the film. And you know, at first I was worried about, well, this is going to kind of spoil it and give it away. But then I had to check myself and realize, like, you know, I'm not Hollywood yet. Like, I don't have the luxury of worrying about spoilers. I knew that I had to get people engaged super quick, because a lot of people who have seen this short film have never heard of me. They've never seen any of my work. They've never heard of the project. So I had to do everything that I can to make sure that as soon as somebody saw this film on YouTube, they will be curious and engaged enough to click on it. And so by using that particular still shot, I was able to do that. The second cool thing I did to hack YouTube's algorithm was I used the log line as the title of the video. Instead of just titling the short film Blood Money, although that was the name of it, I decided to use the log line, aka the description of the film, as the title of the film. That way, when people started reading it, it felt like a story. It felt like, what's going on? What is this about? So that, compared with a super compelling thumbnail, definitely made people pay attention and want to click on the short film to see what it was about. But once they clicked on the short film and started watching it, how did I get them to stick around and not click right off? This is where the third tip came in, y'all. The third tip I did was I just threw the viewer into a cold open. In other words, I didn't worry about using no opening credits for my short film. I didn't do no slow build up. I didn't do none of that flowery stuff. I just started the short film off right in the middle of the action. So as soon as you come into the short film, you're looking at Jason, you're looking at Jenna. He's counting money. She's playing with tarot cards. It's liquor on the table. It's swishers on the table. It's money all over the table. And this is the very first thing you're seeing. And so you're thinking to yourself, like, what's going on in this scene? And it's a short film, so it's not like I had a ton of time anyway, but I made sure I kept the pacing engaging. So 20-30 seconds after starting the film, we're already getting into the meat and potatoes and the inciting incident that kind of like moves the whole thing forward. So Cold open, no credits, keeping the pace and brisk is what helped retain people's attention once they clicked on the film to check it out and see what it was all about. That's it. That's basically the whole strategy, y'all. That is how I was able to make a short film in less than 4 hours and do it while only spending $27. So how do you steal this strategy and make it work for you? Well, the first thing worth mentioning is that since I direct and I also shoot and I also edit, that I was able to one-man band this. Now, if you don't shoot or you don't edit or you don't do any of these things, then it might be worth hiring somebody. You can hire somebody that could take care of those roles that you can't do. But if you wanted to do it yourself, you really could. You don't need any fancy cameras. You can literally use your iPhone or your Android phone if you're one of those people. To shoot the film yourself. Just, make sure your lighting is good and your composition is good and the other elements of, visual storytelling are there. And it really doesn't matter what camera you use when it comes to shooting your short film. So if you want to use your iPhone, and you can. If you would rather hire somebody, then you can. There are so many cool creatives out there that can easily help you bring your film together, and all you got to do is find them. Now, when it comes to editing your film, you can edit your film. There's free editing software out there like DaVinci Resolve. They have a free version. There are also other options. I'll list a couple in the description so you can find those. I'll list all free options so that money will not be a limiting factor. You just have to spend a little time learning how to edit your film, assuming you don't know how to edit. If you already know how to edit, then you on the roll, you cooking with grease, and you don't even have to worry about that. And you can go ahead and make your film happen. So that's pretty much it, guys. That is the magic strategy that I use. And by the way, that $27 that I mentioned, the only money that I used to shoot my short film, that $27 went to catering, because I'm gonna always feed my cast no matter what. It's just the right thing to do. So that $27 went towards sub sandwiches, chips and sodas, and after we wrap for the night, maybe a bottle of wine, maybe. Shout out to the cast though. They were willing to help me out, and they were all very talented, very, very awesome actors that were willing to help me out and do the film. Even though it was a no budget short film, it was just something I had been wanting to do, and I kind of gave myself like 48-hour film festival rules to make sure I didn't overthink it and just let it get, too complex. I wanted to keep it simple, and so that was the challenge that I gave myself, to keep it simple. And I was able to pull it off and make it happen in 4 hours and only $27. And the hard work from that awesome day has garnered very close to 100,000 views, and I couldn't be more excited. So that's it for me, y'all. I'm about to get up out of here. Check out the short film Blood Money if you haven't seen it yet. And if you use these tips to make your own short film, or if you're already a pro at this and you didn't even need these tips at all because you already got this on lock and you got some short films out there, post a link, let me check them out. I love supporting indie filmmakers. I love watching movies, period. So I want to check out all y'all work, all y'all short films. Drop a comment, leave a link, say what's up, subscribe, like the channel, like the post, all that good YouTube stuff. And I'm going to see y'all next time. Peace.